Last week we've been talking about Elijah and how he was sent by God to eradicate Baal worship in Israel. And part of that process was anointing Elisha as his successor with a double portion, and Jehu, who would eventually be king of Israel, but he was a mighty warrior. He was a known opponent of Baal worship, and he was a guy who gets things done. And so last week we finally got to the place where Ahab and Jezebel were vanquished. But Ahab and Jezebel have children that still need to be dealt with. So that's where we're at today. We're going to watch as Ahab and Jezebel's children get dealt with. Now, those of you that take notes, and those of you that don't, I think on your notes the title says Joash. Well, if you take notes, and even if you don't, I think you should write this down. Yeah, if you don't, I think you should write this down. This is the title that I received yesterday. Things aren't falling apart. Semicolon. I'm an English teacher. Make sure you include the semicolon. Things aren't falling apart. Semicolon. They're coming into place. They're coming into place according to God's plan. They're coming into place according to God's plan. So, things aren't falling apart, semicolon. They're coming into place according to God's plan. All of this is in your notes. The kingdom plan of God came precariously close to being destroyed when the Davidic line was reduced to one tiny boy named, you can guess, Joash. This is his story. Now remember, God has made covenants with different people. He made a covenant with Noah, where he promises that he will never again destroy the earth with a flood. He made a covenant with Abraham, where he promised to bless the people on earth through Abraham and his descendants. And he also made a covenant with David. He made a covenant with David saying, you will always have, someone from your bloodline will always sit on the kingdom, on the throne of the kingdom of Israel. Someone from David's bloodline will always sit on the throne in the kingdom of Israel. Now remember, the tribes split, the 10 northern tribes, their capital Samaria, it's Judah and Benjamin, the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. So whoever is succeeding David's bloodline has to come from either Judah or Benjamin. The pool's much smaller with David's bloodline. And of course, the two tribes that stay the most faithful to the Lord, their capital remains Jerusalem, where David brought the Ark of the Covenant. Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. Now remember, Judah, that's the line, that's the bloodline of David. Jesus is called the Lion of Judah. Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, had a son named Jehoram. So Jehoram is the next in the bloodline. During a lull in the civil war, the king and his son went to Israel to meet with Ahab, king of Israel. Now remember, the northern tribes are referred to as Israel. The two southern tribes are referred to as Judah. But they're all Israel. In what was probably an attempt to bridge the two kingdoms to bring peace, Jehoram This is the bloodline. Jehoram was to wed Ahab's daughter. Serious mistake by Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was a pretty good king. His father was Asa, who was a very good king. And Jehoshaphat was really pretty good. Just a couple of mistakes that Jehoshaphat made. Jehoram was to wed Ahab's daughter, Athaliah. Athaliah's mother was Jezebel. So Jehoram's going to marry Jezebel's daughter, Athaliah. Together, and remember, Jehoshaphat's doing this to try to bring peace. Together, this mother and daughter team would stand as the most evil women in the Bible. Influenced by Athaliah, Jehoram makes the same mistake that Ahab makes. Jehoram does not fulfill his duty as the spiritual authority, not only in the nation, but in his own home. That's why Paul tells Timothy and Titus, if you're going to elect someone as the pastor, as the leader, they've got to be able to keep their own home in order. How can they keep many in order if they can't keep their own home in order? Jehoram is making the same mistake that Ahab made. Influenced by Athaliah, Jehoram killed all his brothers and some of the leaders of Israel to consolidate his throne. So Athaliah basically talks him into killing every other heir to the throne. Every other heir to the throne. We're going to kill them all except you and me, Jehoram. Okay? For his wicked deeds, Jehoram died a gruesome death at the word of Elijah. He contracted an incurable disease of the bowels that caused them to spill out in agonizing pain and kill him. And I'd just as soon get past that as quickly as possible because that's not a very good visual. But we do need to read from Scripture every Sunday. This is in 2 Chronicles chapter 21. 2 Chronicles chapter 21. I'm going to start with verse 12. Jehoram received a letter from Elijah the prophet, which said, obviously Elijah hasn't been taken up in the whirlwind yet. This is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says. Look how Elijah identifies God. This is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says. You have not walked in the ways of your father Jehoshaphat. Again, Jehoshaphat was pretty good. Or of Asa, king of Judah. Asa was a great king. But you have walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. That's the 10 northern tribes. And you have led Judah, that's the southern tribes. You have led Judah and the people of Jerusalem to prostitute themselves, just as the house of Ahab did. You have to get the heart of God. To God, when you worship other gods, it's prostitution in God's eyes. It's being unfaithful. Also, Jehoram in God's eyes has caused Israel to go astray. Many times in the Bible, both Paul and Peter say, not many of you should even desire to be teachers and leaders in the church, because you will be held very strict. There's a very strict accountability for the people who are leaders in the church. Prostitute themselves just as the house of Ahab did. You have also murdered your own brothers, members of your father's house, men who were better than you. This is God speaking. Men who were better than you. Now we could talk for about 2 weeks about that, but so now the Lord is about to strike your people, your sons, your wives, and everything that is yours with a heavy blow. You yourself will be very ill with the lingering disease of the bowels. until the disease causes your bowels to come out. Oh, that must have been bad. The Lord aroused against Jehoram the hostility of the Philistines. Remember, the Lord uses human beings to carry out His will, good or bad. He uses human beings to carry out His will, good or bad. The Philistines and the Arabs who lived near the Cushites. Ooh, the Cushites were bad too. After all this, the Lord afflicted Jehoram with an incurable disease of the bowels. In the course of time, at the end of the second year, his bowels came out because of the disease, and he died in great pain. His people made no fire in his honor as they had for his fathers. So imagine you're someone of the tribe of Judah or Benjamin. You've seen Athaliah and Jehoram take the throne. They killed every living heir that they know of in the Davidic bloodline except the two of them. And then you watch Jehoram. Well, they wouldn't have been able to watch it. But Jehoram dies thus dead. It would be easy to think that things are falling apart. But they weren't falling apart. They were coming together according to God's plan. God always has a plan. Always. Raiding Philistines and Arabians, I'm in your notes again. Raiding Philistines and Arabians captured all of Athaliah's sons except Ahaziah. Then the men of Jehu killed her only remaining son, Ahaziah, king of Judah, to avenge Jezebel's cruelty. After Ahaziah's death, Athaliah slaughtered all of her grandchildren so she could seize the throne. She slaughters all of her grandchildren, the line of David, the sons of Jehoram, slaughters them all so that she may seize the throne. If she slaughters all of those grandchildren and she seizes the throne, Satan wins. Satan wins because there will not be a descendant of David left to sit on the throne of Israel. Who sits on the throne of Israel forever, for eternity? Jesus, the Lion of Judah, the tribe of Judah. Joseph, the husband of Mary, was from the tribe of Judah. Through Satan's evil plan, the line of promise hung by a thread. But there was one grandchild she missed. Jehoshaphat, the sister of Ahaziah and the wife of the godly priest Jehoiada, hid her baby nephew Joash in the last place Athaliah wanted to look, the temple. She's not going in the temple. So that's where they hid. The one little boy that Athaliah didn't get because they hid him in the temple. And look, God always has people strategically placed to carry out His plan. God has a plan for each and every one of you. When you feel like things are falling apart, that's when you have to remember, God has a plan for you. It's not falling apart in God's eyes. That doesn't happen. When you think things are falling apart, you have to remind yourself, they're not falling apart. They're coming together according to God's plan, and seek His plan. Do you think He'd have a plan for you and not reveal it to you? But He will always have people strategically placed to help you according to His plan. There will always be people strategically placed to help you according to His plan. When I was 24 years old, this is something I'm not proud of. Something I'm not very proud of. Well, I'm not proud of it all. But when I was 24 years old, I was raised Catholic. When I was 24 years old, I was knocking at the rectory door. And I asked for a priest because I didn't know what else to do. And I went into the priest's office and he came in. And he said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "If somebody doesn't help me right now, I'm going to kill myself." That's how much pain I was in. That's how much I believed things were falling apart. I had no hope. I was at the end of my hope. It was the last ditch effort, knocking on that door. And this priest comes in, Father Allen. Says, what can I do to help you? I said, if somebody doesn't help me, I'm going to kill myself. God placed him strategically in my path. It's his way. I come to the end of myself. Isn't that part of the lyrics? When you come to the end of yourself? Perfect song. Perfect song. So, Joash's aunt hides him in the temple. Okay? God's entire plan for the world now rested on the life of this one small child. Lose the child, the seed of David dies, and Satan wins. The child, Joash, was raised in secret for 6 years under the protection of the priests. It was in his wicked grandmother, Athaliah's 7th year, the number of completion, that Jehoiada brought out Joash and put a crown on him. He was given a copy of the covenant and anointed the new king of Israel. The people clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king! God had done it." Athaliah heard the noise and came out to the temple crying, "Treason!" But she was struck down at the command of Jehoiada the priest. Jehoiada then made a covenant with the people to remain faithful to Yahweh and went out to destroy the priest of Baal that Athaliah had introduced to Judah. And finally, the Baal worshippers are finally eradicated from Israel. Elijah couldn't do it on his own. The Lord had helpers for him also. And you remember Elijah came to the place where he wanted to die. I can't take it anymore, God. I'm the only one left. You know, God doesn't leave us that way. 2 Kings 11. 2 Kings 11 is where you have the story of Athaliah coming out and they're taking care of her. And Joash is 7 years old. This is the last verse of chapter 11, verse 21. Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign. Can he reign by himself at 7? God always has people strategically placed in your life to carry out his plan. If you do not know God's plan for you, ask him. He would not keep it secret from you. Things aren't falling apart. They're coming into place according to God's plan. Some of you may have noticed that I'm wearing Sunday red. And who am I making reference to?
Jews.
Oh, I love that answer. Air pound. Air pound.
Oh.
I love that answer. Sunday red. Tiger Woods. He's back in contention. He's back. The Tiger's back on the prowl. Golf is saved, at least for one more week. Now, I'm not particularly a fan of Tiger Woods. If any of you know anything about Tiger Woods, he's unquestionably, as far as physical talent, the best golfer we've ever known. But his personal character, some of the flaws in his personal character were reviewed, and because he is such a celebrity, all the world got to see his life. We thought we were watching his life fall apart in front of our very eyes on television. He left the game of golf, lost his wife, lost his family. We thought we were watching Tiger Woods' life fall apart right in front of our eyes. But we weren't, were we? He's back. He's back. And you know what? He's a different person now. He's a much different person now than he was before. But, you know, Tiger, when he was on top, when Tiger was on top, his swing still had some flaws in it. And they knew that if Tiger kept swinging the way he was, his body would not hold up. And he's run into trouble. Physical things are starting to catch up with him. They knew that his swing, if he kept that swing, his body would not hold up. Okay? So while he was on top, they completely redid his swing. Him and his swing coach, they completely redid. They just broke it down, started from scratch. The best golfer in the world. So what happens when you completely change and go back to zero? For a while, it's not going to go too well, right? There's a learning curve. So everybody watched Tiger, the best golfer in the world. What? He's redoing his golf swing? And we watched him. He was hitting it all over the place. We thought, he's falling apart. But no. They had to break it down to rebuild it. To rebuild it so it would be stronger, better. Does that sound familiar to you? Isn't that God's way? We come to the end of ourselves. Come to the end of ourselves. Once you come to the end of yourself and you say, I can't do it. I can't do it. Then God says, okay, now there's somebody I can work with. Things are not falling apart. They're coming into place. You know Mike Moustakis, don't you? Well, not personally, but Moose, the savior of the Royals. Moose and Haas, the saviors of the Royals. He was horrible. His swing was horrible. They had to send him down to the minors. They sent him down to the minors. And I remember listening on the radio, they said, well, that's the end of Mike Moustakis. We'll never see him again. He's too stubborn to change. But things weren't falling apart, were they? Who has the record, the team record for most home runs in a season now? Mike Moustakis. He went back there, and for somehow, some way, he was humbled. I guess being sent back into the minors would humble you. But he listened, and he started changing. We thought it was all falling apart, but it wasn't. It wasn't. I taught at Oak Park High School for several years. I remember going to a soccer game. And there was this kid out on that soccer field at Park Hill South. Anybody ever been to the soccer field at Park Hill South? At night, you're looking you look into the downtown Kansas City. It's a beautiful view. Beautiful view. I went to watch the soccer game, and there was a kid out there. He was clearly better than everyone else. Clearly better than everyone else. He just stuck out like you wouldn't believe. I said, who's that kid? The kid for Oak Park? That's Ray Sorry. Well, where's he going next year to college? He's just a freshman. Best player on the team. Best player on the field. He was a freshman in high school. Man. Well, the next year, Ray Sorry wasn't playing soccer because he had lung cancer. He had lung cancer. He was walking in school when he was able to come back to school. You know, he didn't have any hair. Had lung cancer when he was a sophomore in high school. Everybody thought, it's all falling apart for Ray. It's all falling apart for Ray. You know what Ray's doing now? Anybody? What's the soccer team, the professional soccer team for Seattle? The Sounders? He now plays for the Seattle Sounders. It wasn't falling apart. One of these days I'm gonna have Ray come and talk to us a little bit. It was his faith. He came to terms with God. He came to terms with the fact that he was never going to play soccer again. He came to terms with the fact that he was never going to play soccer again. He wasn't bitter about it. It was his faith. It was his faith that got him through that. Everyone else looked and thought, oh man, it's all falling apart for Ray. He will tell you now that he's thankful for that experience. He'll tell you now that he's thankful for that experience because he wouldn't be the man that he is today without it. Things are not falling apart. They're coming together according to God's plan. Anybody who owns a business, it looks like it's falling apart. It's not. A job. Somebody loses their job. It looks like things are falling apart, but they're not. They're coming together. If you're a child of God, and you remain faithful to God, they're not falling apart. They're coming together. They're coming together according to His plan. Marriages, relationships, health, all of those, whatever. Each and every one of us at some point in our life, either our financial support, relationship, health, every one of us, we're going to go through that. We're going to go through that, every one of us. And people will look and say, man, things are falling apart for so-and-so. But they're not. They're coming together according to God's plan. I remember my dad, I was a wrestling coach for Oak Park. I remember my dad came to the state tournament. Wasn't feeling well. Been for several months now. I thought something was wrong with his gallbladder. And he drove 12 hours to go to the state tournament. And I lived about 6 hours away from him. So I didn't see him very often. But I knew he'd been sick. They thought it was his gallbladder. I looked up in the stands, and we made eye contact. And I told the assistant coach, I said, something's very seriously wrong with my dad. I could just tell when we made eye contact. I probably told this story many times, but a couple weeks later, he was diagnosed with inoperable pancreatic cancer. Inoperable pancreatic cancer. And I told my doctor about it, and he said, well, there's a 3% survival rate with pancreatic cancer. If it's inoperable, Tim, he's going to go fast. He didn't pull any punches with me. He said, Tim, he's going to go very fast. He's not going to survive, and he's going to go very fast if it's inoperable. And I think he lost a total of 90 pounds. He weighed about 185 when he was diagnosed. And by the time, in 8 months' time, he was gone. And I think he'd lost 90 pounds. I know that he was right at 100 pounds when he passed away. And everybody would come and they'd look at him, at Leroy, and say, Leroy's his life, everything's falling apart. He was just shriveling away. But that wasn't the truth. That was not the truth. That was not the truth. Anybody who took the time to visit with him, he would have explained to them, I am just now starting to understand life. I'm just now starting to understand life. Things weren't falling apart for him. They were coming together according to God's plan. You know what? And my dad told me I would go back home. Friday night, I would go home. Sunday night, come back here. And the last time I was there, I knew that was the last time I was going to see him. And he did too. I knew it was the last time. And he knew it was the last time. I knew he wasn't going to make it through that week. And he told me, he said, Tim, I want you to give the eulogy for my funeral. And I want it to be a celebration of life. Because when you give that eulogy, I will be more alive than I have ever been in my existence. Things weren't falling apart for him. Things weren't falling apart. They were coming together according to God's plan. The last story. Most of us are familiar with the story of Lazarus. Jesus' friend, Lazarus. And you know the trivia question. What's the shortest verse in the Bible? The shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. Jesus wept. He was weeping over Lazarus, his friend. They came, and Lazarus was the brother of Mary and Martha. They were very dear friends with Jesus. They came to where Jesus was, and they said, your friend Lazarus is very sick. He's very ill, and they want you to come. And he loved these people. And he said, nah, okay, well, thanks. He told his disciples, we're not going for a while. We're going to wait for a while. So they waited for 2 days. They waited for 2 days before they even started back to where Lazarus lives. By the time they got to where Lazarus lived, he'd been in the tomb for 4 days. He'd been in the tomb for 4 days, and Martha comes, inconsolable. Inconsolable, Martha is. If you would have been here, Lord, he would not have died. If you would have been here, he would not have died. To them, things had fallen apart. And Jesus said, don't worry. This happened so that God's glory through his Son could be revealed. God's glory through his Son could be revealed. And you know how it ends. He says, Lazarus, come out of the tomb. And here comes Lazarus. He's wrapped up like a mummy. Comes out of the tomb, Lazarus. How many people that were there and saw that? How many of those people that saw that do you think put their faith in God that day? Of the people that were there and saw that, how many of them put their faith in Jesus, do you think? I would think so. I would think so. We're all the same. We're all Lazarus. You know, we were all dead. We were all dead before we put our faith in Jesus. We were all Lazarus. Things were not falling apart. They were coming together. They were coming together. And just like Martha said, Lord, if you would have been here, you wouldn't have died. There are people that prayed for each and every one of us. Lord, they need you to be there, or they're going to be dead. Things are not falling apart. They're coming into place according to God's plan. Let's pray.